Hello, we're live. We have Fred, the one and only, the mystical unicorn, INFBae, Fred 2. So we could get started with talking about how you've been dealing with COVID and stuff as like an IJ, or we could just go in straight to typology. What would you prefer?
Well, I mean, start with COVID. That's a good start point, I suppose. I've not really been concerned generally. I should probably be more concerned than I was. I kind of feel like it will sort itself out. You know, it's been like a hard time for everyone, and I feel kind of bad because I've had it easier than a lot of other people. Because it's like, oh, the government says you can't leave the house. Okay, I'm okay with that. The government says, oh, we'll pay your salary. You can stay at home. Okay, I don't even need to work now. So yeah, I think generally I've been more than okay with that. I'm actually not looking forward to the world going back to the way it was. So
Me neither, man. Have you like actually? So you haven't been going into work and stuff, and like you've been furloughed then?
yeah, that's right. Yeah, furloughed since some months ago. Too feminine sensory to remember, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm glad you haven't gotten depressed from your furloughing or anything like that, or gotten too bored.
Nah, I mean, there's been some times where I got bored, but there's always something to do. You know, I've got a IJ box full of stuff that I can always do. So
I was thinking that yesterday as I was like walking down the street. I was like, okay, he's gonna either be like, oh, I was really freaked out when it came out and there was a pandemic, or he's gonna be like, yeah, I didn't really think about that too much, but then there was a lockdown, and I was like, oh, thank fuck. Like, it was gonna be one of the two. Um, so like randomly and swiftly moving on to MBTI and typology. How did you type yourself before OP? Like I heard you got an INFP result on Binyamin's channel, but beyond that, you didn't go too deep into it. What was the journey till
that's right.
being a unicorn?
Yeah. Well, like a few years ago, I took like the 16 personalities test, and I got INFP in that. I kind of threw it away. I posted it on my Facebook wall. It was like a little bit of blast play, like, what did you get? What did you get? But I didn't really take it too seriously. I kind of just threw it away. But like last year, sometime, maybe 2 years now, I can't remember. But I just happened to stumble into objective personality, and that's why I started getting interested in it again. And then I kind of branched out from OPS for a while. I went into like socionics for a little bit. I watched a lot of what's his name? What's his name?
C.S. Joseph?
That's the one. Yeah. C.S. Joseph. I really like his stuff. I don't agree with a lot of what he's. I don't agree with a lot of his system, but I think he's a good guy, really. So anyway, yeah. So like through the self-typing process, I kind of been through all of them. I can see how any of them fit. INTP I sat on for quite a while. I think I kind of related to it a lot more in the sense of I like the profiles and I liked what I like that functioning order, if you see what I mean. So I think I attached myself to it for a while. But yeah,
I think a lot of people think that's a cool type. I never like saw the appeal of INTP personally, but it seems like in the community a lot of people decide like they're INFJs or they're INTPs.
Yeah, well, I suppose because people generally, especially now, there's a lot of respect, I suppose, around intelligence, and there's sort of like if you're dumb, then you're like a bad person or whatever, and it's I don't know, maybe that's always been the case, but it seems like more and more now, especially with like Silicon Valley and stuff like this, and like technology is such a core part of our lives. I suppose TINE is the smartest one, so people who respect that want to be the smartest one, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting because even just like if you think 10 years ago, being a nerd wasn't a cool thing. It was like to be avoided at all costs. And now we all love being nerds. Everyone's like, oh, nerd is like the new black or like the new cool thing.
Yeah, NT is very much in the SF right now. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really weird. Carry on.
Yeah, so I sat with INTP for a bit, but I couldn't sit with it for too long because I knew it wasn't right. So I was like, oh, I kept trying to find information to discredit it. But you know how it is on the internet. You can, especially with like personality systems, you'll find all sorts of Barnum effect information that you'll just go, okay, well that feels like me, and I can identify with that. And then ultimately, all it comes down to is I'm just Sorry, I realised how much I'm blasting.
No, it's good. This is what
yeah.
it's for. The video literally has your name on it, so it's all about your opinions and stuff.
So yeah, INTP for a bit. When I was like really taking it properly seriously, especially with OP system, FENI I sat with for quite a while, because it felt, when I lived like an ENFJ, it felt very much like me but more extrovertedly, and I suppose like now getting my type, it sort of makes sense. Like I think, is it personality hacker? They kind of suggest falling on your second function more as sort of like a growth. I think there's something to that. I can kind of see it myself, where even though FE is a savior, kind of doing it more concertedly, like stuff like this, for instance. I feel like there's a lot of TIs that are more comfortable being in these kind of situations, even though they have FE demon, which is very interesting. Yeah.
I think FE savior, like just from me observing you, I can't really tell you what's going on in your head or anything, but it seems like you guys are so aware of like other people's perceptions and stuff that it can be like overwhelming. I actually like have a question about this later on, but I think that might be why. I don't know if you have anything to go off of what I just said there, but
no, I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, because I suppose with the TI, they're coming in with their sort of known identity, whereas me, I'm like I'm not really struggling with the other person aspect of it. I'm not struggling with the fact that I'm talking to you. I'm struggling with it, the fact that I have a camera on me, that kind of thing. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's right.
It's weird, overly self-aware, the FEs. But so you're blast play and introverted as fuck. So what's going on there? Because we've got Kevin, I think, who has like the same thing. Where like I saw in your Binyamin interview, within like a week or two of getting typed, you were like, oh yeah, I guess I'm just internalizing the blast play. And for him, for example, it's like a really big like, what the fuck is this? How can I be blast play if I'm just doing it in my head? How do you what's that about? How do you feel about that? And what even would you see as a difference between blast play in your head and what is sleep then? Because you have sleep third, so it should be like a hobby animal.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like delineating blast play and sleep, because it is sort of hard to. I think. Hang on a sec. There's a few things there. Let me just go back.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's okay. I think a large part of like my more introverted nature is just because I have masculine TI. I think that shows a lot. Like you can even see it with like feminine DE firsts. They're like very introverted, and even if like David Chan's animal ordering, what was it? Like they define introverted and extroverted depending on what animal is last. See what I mean? So I think even more so than that, it's more like just having masculine DI, even as a demon, it's a lot of like internal pressure. If you see what I mean? So it's because
you're double masculine as well, introverted world.
Exactly, yeah. So I think I wouldn't want to say it's especially more difficult for me being in the extroverted world. But yeah, I would have originally said it's because I have masculine sleep, so there's a lot of like pressure going inwards.
Right.
But
Double
then looking,
masculine,
yeah, exactly. But then looking at you just said his name, but I've forgotten it. The other INFJ guy,
Kevin.
Yeah. Sorry, Kevin. Yeah. So, but since he has feminine NI, I was like, oh, it can't just be masculine sleep then. But I think the pivotal point probably is the DI masculine.
Yeah.
Like what's her name? She's a last ENTJ. Maddie. Like Maddie has that masculine FI, and she's like, she feels very much like a feeler, like a very introverted feeler. You know what I mean? So I think you can see that pattern elsewhere as well.
Yeah. So how because I asked you so many fucking questions in one go. So how would you like? For me, the way I'm delineating like sleep and blast is like they're the same thing, but one's external and one's internal. Would you?
Right.
So like in your head, do you see like a difference between when you're going into sleep mode? I don't give a shit how this affects anyone, like my thoughts and stuff. And when you're doing blast in your head, you like there's an FE element to it, like you're taking into account the FE, even if you're not actually doing FE.
Yeah.
Is that something you see or not at all?
Yeah, I think it is. A lot of the time to get to sleep, like an easier way for me to get to it is I'll just sort of TED talk in my head, Like I'm teaching people my information,
Yeah.
and then I just imagine what the ping back would be. Like, oh, that's wrong. Oh, okay, that's wrong. And then I'll start again and go, okay, I'll teach this now with the new information. And so that's how I kind of like cheat sleep. You know what I mean?
Do you get that with like you just have like a conversation with your friend's mum, and when she doesn't like it, then you sort of like divert it into something else, like in your
Um,
head, like just like a random scenario like that, like you saying TED Talks and stuff.
that's that's interesting. There have been like there are some things where I'm trying to process it, but then there are some people in my life where that kind of information they wouldn't like, and yeah, it does get more difficult to process it then because I'm kind of it's sort of like I have this imaginary heckler in the audience.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? And it's
yeah.
like I know it's in my head, and I know that this heckler doesn't exist, but they do exist, and it's sort of like it's harder to filter that out, even if it isn't, even if it's just in my head. Yeah.
Because I like really hardcore related to you on like some of these things that you were saying when I saw you in other interviews, just the type of shit that nobody ever says. Like I like imagining yourself like on a TV show or like doing something like this. Like you just sit around and you don't do anything, but you imagine yourself talking to people and you're like, in my head, man, I've got it all figured out. um so do you feel like doing that whole sort of process like helps you when you actually come to like blasting in real life afterwards? Like you don't feel like you're just like any sort of drawing just for random shit to talk about. You've already like planned it all out. You've already had the conversation. You know how it's going to go in your own version of it.
Well, this is something I've struggled with for a lot of years actually, because I do a lot of mental preparation for going on the phone and stuff. Like, this is something you can talk about later, I suppose. But I'm going back to education, going to college and then university, and I had to do like an interview basically just to see if the course was right for me. But leading up to that phone call, I essentially just overplanned the shit out of it, and I imagined all these scenarios of like, how would I answer this? How will I answer that? Like a branching tree structure of how to address everything that could possibly be, come up in conversation. And then the conversation was nothing like it. Like he didn't. 99% of what I'd prepared wasn't needed, and it's similar with like this actual scenario here, where I had a lot of preparation of what I was going to say, but it very rarely, if ever, plays out how I imagine it. But I think I still need to do it just as mental preparation, sort of like I'm confident that I can consider stuff. I don't know. Does that make sense?
It does. What's weird about it? Like I do similar stuff, and I don't know if you have the same experience as me, and if it's function related. But I feel like doing it actually makes it way worse. Like you get way more anxiety. Like you give yourself all this anxiety over something that is so simple, but you make it complicated.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, what the fuck? I guess that's why it's like an addiction to organize. But what the fuck? It's so fucking stupid. So you're supposed to have an IJ box, and back in the days, you didn't really know what that was. Do you feel like your IJ boxes tend to be conceptual, or are they physical, or like you're moving right now? Is that freaking you out? You're like, oh shit, my flat. Like for me, last time I moved, the last time I was in a flat, I was like, oh, this place is gonna be so missed. Like on the last day, I was like, oh god, no.
Yeah, I think I'm quite fortunate because I've only lived here for a short period of time. I only recently moved into here a few months ago, really, and so I'm moving. Just the concept of moving is still in my IJ box, if you know what I mean. So I'm less stressed about it this time because it's
I
like,
see what you mean.
yeah, and I think also I'm perhaps generally less concerned about moving because growing up we moved a lot, and there were two households, mum and dad divorced, so they were constantly moving around. So I think generally I'm quite fortunate in the sense that moving is somehow part of my conceptual IJ box. So I think that's sort of answers your questions about whether it's like more conceptual. I think it is. I think it's more a conceptual thing, rather than physical thing. Like I'm not too concerned with my actual flat, for instance. Like if my flat burnt down, it would be stressful because I would have to conceptually like, oh shit, now what am I going to do, kind of thing. But I wouldn't really be concerned about the flat itself. I wouldn't be concerned about losing my computer or whatever because it's replaceable or whatever.
Yeah. Do you have like sort of like branching off of that? Maybe do you have attachments to your space and stuff? Like, do you value the fact that you have your room and that like people come into it if you decide they do? But like, otherwise? Like for me, if somebody came into my room, I'd just fucking freak out. Do you have that at all? Like unannounced, like no knocking, just somebody walks in, you just like, what?
Yeah, there is a concern of that. Not like close friends and family. Like if a friend wanted to come over and they just showed up on my doorstep, I'd be perfectly okay with that. But what I think I had a landlord a few years ago, and he would just let himself in.
Yeah, I heard about this.
Oh right, okay. Have I mentioned it before?
Yeah, you talked about it on Binyamin, and he was like, "That's illegal."
I mean, yeah, and yeah. So I suppose the fact that it's come up twice, yeah. So yeah, people. I think close friends and family that I've kind of I tell them, you can come over whenever you want. Then it's already prearranged that they can come over whenever, and so it's not really a surprise. But with the landlord, it's more like, well, we haven't even had a discussion about whether this is appropriate, or if I can say no,
Yeah.
So
Okay,
yeah.
so I'm getting that it's not physical at all, and you just don't really care about space or VSE at all. So what would it be conceptually? Where do you see yourself like over organizing stuff, and what do you really care about in your mind? Like, what's your safe space IJ box where you control everything? Or do you just actually not have one and not relate to the concept at all?
I think this is a slight tangent, but I think the IJ prepper kind of pattern that is in OP, I actually see it mapping more to TE. So
yeah,
I think
I can see that too,
because I feel like I've known ESTJs, for instance, who are really into prepping, and they have like the dugout bag kind of meme. But I don't really have that kind of the same level of preparation, if you know what I mean. It's more.
yeah.
I hate saying this, but it's more just spiritual preparation. It's more just psychological. Okay. If I can just convince myself that it's organized, then it's organized. If you know what I mean. So a lot of So a lot of my preparation is just trying to get to a point where I can convince myself that it's prepared. You know what I mean?
Giving yourself like a sense of security.
Yeah. Which it's more psychological than it is physical.
Yeah, okay, so it's so conceptual that even you can't sort of round down where it is, but it's just a general sense of like giving yourself security in your life. Like if you have confidence, you have everything type of situation.
That's it, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and confidence in general is sort of made up anyway, you know what I mean? It's sort of like you just have to convince yourself you're confident, and then you're confident. There's no other way to become confident apart from just believing that it's true.
Yeah. It's weird how like NF and SF kind of work, because it's like, where is this stuff that we're talking about? Like you can't point to it and stuff, but it's just like such a real part of human life. Like if you feel like you're a fuck up and stuff, you can have like the best job and whatever, and you actually become a fuck up because you've decided it, and you can be an actual fuck up and think you're doing great, and you'll be doing great within a few weeks. Everyone will believe you. Like,
I think that's been a large part of my life actually. Just my NI kind of locked on to being a fuck up in a lot of ways. A lot of kind of just manifesting reality just because you expect it. I think it is interesting that it's very frequently underestimated. Like, what was it? Is it The Secret?
I think that's the book.
Yeah, it's all about like what you're seeking you, or something like that. And it is kind of very woo woo, but I don't know. There is an element to that, you know what I mean? But
there is. Like, I think that you can get way too fucking far and really retarded with it. Like sort of like I think like it's like demon NF. A lot of people who just like they fixate on it in like such a like unrealistic way. But like I see it like in psychology, we know for a fact, like with people and stuff, like those people who get into the same relationship over and over again. Supposedly that's just like projection, and also we can read, like, even if you don't have FE, people can read each other on like a different level. Like you get, like, they call it attunement and stuff, and you can see into people, and you can see how they're like similar to the bad people in your past, and you sort of are attracted to like reenacting the past somehow and doing like a self-fulfilling prophecy thing. It's really interesting.
But I think did we speak about this? I think, didn't you link me to like
vaguely,
the parasympathetic system? Yeah. I'll have to go back over that. Yeah.
Get into that consume last. So do you feel like you're tribe over self because you kind of, even though you're no self over tribe, because even though you're tribe over self, you sort of exist within DI. Like you can't really like identify as being FE. Like you can like conceptually, but you can't be like I am this thing. You're your TI really, aren't you? Or are you not?
Yeah. I wouldn't say that I am FE. My type code is FE. I would say my psyche is FE, but I wouldn't say I'm FE. I don't think anyone can be an extroverted function, but it's still.
Yeah.
Oh man, I was hoping we wouldn't get into this because I could talk about it for hours. But there's different kinds of self, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And like with OP, you can start to kind of piece this apart in certain areas where it's, there's the self of me, which is NIFE, but there's the self of me, which is also TI. You know what I mean? And I don't know. No, I can't talk about it. I've spoken about this. This is one example where
that was so good. FE self-censorship of TI.
This is one example where I've blast played TED Talk to this in my head, hours and hours of this. Like it's one that I always go back to, or it has been over the past few months. But every time I do this, for everything that I blast play continuously in my head, it's almost impossible to talk about that out in the open, because as soon as I start to talk about it, I don't know what it is, because I'm talking in my, I don't know, like I'm talking in my head in my voice, so I think I should be able to say that out loud, but as soon as I say it out loud, it starts to just fall apart, even though it's coherent in my head. I think that's just,
I guess maybe it sounds dumber when you say it out loud.
I think that, yeah.
But I'd say go for it. This is like the perfect opportunity. You're going to get closure on your blast play that you've had it for the last few months. Might as well just like actually get it out and not think about it anymore. Come on, Fred, let's go. FE pressure.
I think it's because I haven't cleanly sleep processed it properly as well.
Okay.
I think the large part is just saying it out loud. It's now in the actual FE sphere, and so it's harder to stay in the T. So that you're right, that is like the largest element of it. But also because I've just been blast playing it, I haven't really been delineating it properly. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, if you want to go ahead and talk about whatever you were going to talk about, you can get up to a point where you feel like it's too stupid and woo woo, and then we'll like sort of like just leave it there and let the tribe carry on the rest of your thought for you. Unless you still want to say it at all, and we can move on. I'm not too fussed.
I think I have to kind of, a large part of it also is I have to kind of realize a lot of stuff as I'm saying it. So, because it's, I think it's just the feminine sensory, you know, I know that I've been through it before, and I know that I've broken it down before, but then I have to go back and remake the mistakes in conversation. But I suppose this is just meta conversation, so I can avoid talking about it.
Yeah. I was going to say, so you don't want to talk about it, let's move on. Unless, like, it's down to you. You can say yes or no, and we'll move either direction here in this conversation.
Now, we'll move on. Okay.
So is feminine FE annoying to you? Like, for me, it's like, I think I have feminine FE, and I find it really annoying. Because I'm like, I know what's going on here, but also let me hear your stupid opinion, and we'll do that anyway, even though I know that you're wrong. But we're still, and it causes like internal conflict in me.
Yeah, it's very frustrating, and a lot of the time it becomes just it's just avoidant, you know, because it's like it would take so much effort for me to go through. Not only is it introverted, not only is it demon, I have to then go through the logical steps, which I already struggle with anyway, and then I have to deal with like your emotional fallout or whatever, and then it's like, yeah. So a lot of the time it's not even worth it. So I do find it kind of frustrating to have it, just because it's I think mainly just because, again, like I'm just very avoidant.
Yeah, it's interesting. I speak to like quite a few INFJs of like different subtypes just randomly across the community, and like being avoidant seems to be like almost more of a thing with like the last ones, I think, because like it's hard for them to even access the FE. So that's something interesting. I wonder what it would be like to be like a single decider with like feminine FE at the top.
Yeah, do we have any? Do we have any in the
We
community?
must. Thomas Aylott, personality engineering
Oh
dude.
yeah.
Yeah, masculine TI at the bottom. So he gets like all these like really deep ideas that he's like forged in the fires of like his demons. So it's quite good. Like he's like really thought him out. He's not just like throwing random TIs out.
And it's interesting, even though technically his TI is lower. I've spoken to the boys about this. Hi, boys. Um, as, um, even though his TI is lower, I feel like his TI is sharper than mine. I think just because it's on an axis that he respects more, you know. Whereas sort of like I'm okay abusing the T and abusing the F because it doesn't really matter as long as I get the concept right and as long as I don't make any errors in the details. You know, I don't care as much about having the logical systems. So I thought, I don't know what my point was there, but
I think you were sort of like going off in a different loop to get to the same point that I was. That like, because he's like his TI's at the bottom, he's like forged it. Like I was saying, forged in the fire. Like it's like it's really been an effort to like go through it. So it's like really hashed out. Like when a blast blaster says something that like they've thought out and actually need to blast to you, it's going to be like the most concise, amazing blast ever. Whereas like higher blast, it's just like whatever.
Exhibit A.
I guess I'm Exhibit B too because I just talk mad shit. And you take consideration to your blast. You wanted to say something that you didn't crystallize. You know, you can't be down on yourself, Red.
No, thanks, man.
So do you feel like, I feel like I already know the answer to this, but let's explore it a bit, that the TIFE axis sort of causes you to be more decidery than observery in reality? Like in your head, you're probably like a single observer freaking out all the time about stuff. But in reality, you're spending most of your time dealing with people, situations, and sort of balancing self and tribe just because of the nature of how TIFE is. Which isn't really such a problem. Like if you were an INTJ or something, then you'd be like really observer. But as an INFJ, you're sort of leaning more towards the sidery.
Yeah, I think that's so. I suppose part of that is just. I think a large part of that is FE. I think I've spoken to. I'm not even going to remember a name, but I've spoken to someone about this. About it's sort of the FE is more person, or F in general is more person centric. If you know what I mean. So even though both TE and FE are tribe centric, the F is more about people. So if you see what I mean, like personhood. So I think maybe FE is a little bit more decidery in the sense of social dynamics, maybe.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think maybe something like that. And I think also, I suppose you're just going to see yourself as your middle functions because that, like you say, that's what you're kind of wrestling with. So I feel a lot more decidery just because that's what I'm looking at, you know.
I wonder if this sort of like goes off onto a tangent of what you were talking about instead of what the question was about, but it was good what you said, that it made me think of some stuff. I wonder if like double observers see their observers really clearly, because for me, I'm not really convinced on any type yet. I'm fairly sure I have like NISE, TIFE in some order, but I don't know what the fuck it is. And I don't see NI or SE at all. Like, I see things that imply that they're happening, but I don't ever think to myself, oh, let me just fucking NI for a second, or like, let me gather in some SE. It just kind of happens. And then like your deciders are you. So if you're a single observer, let me know. Not double observer, let me know how you feel. Yeah, do you ever speak with INTJs and stuff and feel like it's just like a totally different level of like, I've heard that Dave apparently like tells stories of like walking outside and there's some guy walking past and he just doesn't even see the people. He's just like totally in like getting mail or whatever. Do you feel that way with FE? Do you feel like you're always looking for people? Like you're always sort of trying to make people part of the story? You know,
that's interesting. Sort of like he just sees people as NPCs and not even like part of the main story.
Yeah, he's just like not even paying attention. He just doesn't. They're just like kind of. They're just shit. There's part of the SE chaos around him as people, I guess.
That's interesting. I think I relate to it in the sense of they're part of the SE chaos, but but I'm hyper aware of people, and I'm constantly making sure that if there's someone around, I have to make sure that I know where that person is, if you know what I mean. So I suppose it's the same but opposite. Yeah, what were you thinking?
Yeah. I was saying, I was just getting like, oh, I hate that so much. Like, I feel like I can't think my thoughts and stuff if somebody's around because they're gonna have like an emotion near me, and then I have to like fixate on them for a second. I hate it so much. You
Yeah,
hate
well,
it too.
I absolutely hate it. Like at my current job, soon to be ex job, we used to go to these events where we'd set up shop and teach. Like sometimes we'd like teach people like coding or something related to that anyway. But like whenever we do those, and I had to do the demonstration stuff, and they're kind of like sitting next to me watching over my shoulder, like, oh, we just want to watch how you do it. It's like, oh shit, I really don't want to be watched how I do things. That's like I hate people looking over my shoulder. I can't stand it. Yeah, because I just can't think. And then like when I'm just sitting at a computer on my own, I can do everything. That's fine. It's not going to be a problem. But it's like when someone's watching me, all that information just falls out of my head. Because I just get so locked onto the FE, like say. So yeah.
Yeah, your TI just evaporates, and you're just like in the moment. You just become SEFE, and you're just like fuck.
Yeah.
So, do you have any problems with actually? I like brought something up in the last question and totally glossed over it. So, do you see yourself doing NISE? Like, do you see your observers?
Yeah.
Do you see like symptoms of it? Like for me, I see symptoms of like I'm just lumping a bunch of shit together, and people will tell me, I'll be like, fucking Brad Pitt, Tom Cruise, same guy, whatever. Women like him. They do movie things, and people will be like, dude, no, they're so fucking different. And I'll be like, fucking same type of shit. Just fucking put it over there. Like, so I see myself. I see symptoms of NI and stuff like that, but I don't consciously decide I'm gonna NI or something.
That's a good way of doing it. Yeah. I think I've worded it in the same way as well. It is more symptoms of it. You see the void of the SE. I think I see the SE more than the NI. I think the NI. I think it's not worth spending much active time on because it just happens automatically. So it's like why. Yeah. The analogy I use is just like, why would a fish know that it's in water? It doesn't know it's in water until it's out of water. So like, I don't notice my NI until I'm in the SE. So I mean, like, I don't notice how, like, I don't notice the problems NI is causing until in situations like this, where I'm having to pay more attention to SE stuff. So yeah, I'm the same. I don't really see the NI and SE until there's like maybe like some kind of transitional shift, like to make me pay attention to it. Yeah, I'm looking much more at the deciders. Yeah, I'm looking at what I'm trying to figure out what you're feeling, and I'm trying to hold on to what I'm thinking. That's what I'm looking at most of the time.
Where do you see the SE leaving a void in your life?
Example, like this is a good example. Having to like back stuff up. This is a good example. Yeah, this is a good example. Like just taking care of my shit, I think is how I'd summarize it. Yeah.
Like, okay, I think I have the same thing. It's just like you're living too much in sort of NF land that like life is like passing you by. That's how I experience. Like, I think I have poor SE, and if I do, that's how I'm experiencing it.
Yeah, well, the days just disappear, kind of thing, and not paying attention to dates or
yeah, big time. Yeah, like before this, it was like literally my birthday the day before we did this, and I totally didn't realize that was a thing. Am I crackling on your end? Thank you.
Everybody say happy birthday in chat. I don't think so. A little bit when the sound comes on and off, but that's normal. So,
okay,
am I crackling?
I'm crackling. Yeah, but it's like on my end, and I was gonna have to unplug and plug something back in, but it stopped now. It's stopped already on my end, and it's something that happens like consistently on my computer, so it's not anything you can do. So if it's not happening on your end, I'm going to assume it's not really a real thing on the recording, and I'm just going to power through.
Nice.
So in socionics, this is kind of like unrelated to objective personality, but in socionics, you should have TE polar. So it should be like a total blind spot. Like you've got TI and you've got FE, and you sort of use those in place of where you'd use TE, and you just have no use for TE. You don't see it, you don't care, you don't want to know. It's like even worse for you than SE. Do you relate to that at all? Or is there a function that like you just can't get?
I do relate to that more than TE is the hardest function for me. Like in the audio Dave left me for OPS, the way he spoke about FE was the way I see TE. It's like it's almost incomprehensible to me. It is the hardest one. It's harder than SI. SI is hard, but T is much harder. But I think to a certain degree, I might have been able to make it fit no matter what type I got. You know what I mean? I could fit any function into the polar slot and make a fairly compelling case to myself why it fits. But I think, yeah, TE is... I have no idea what the fuck TE is doing. Like it's almost incomprehensible to me. But like a lot of the time, I compartmentalize TE as just dumb. Like that's my natural reaction. Oh, you're just a fucking idiot. Yeah, like that's the only way I can grasp it. in the same way, I imagine like FE polar just kind of goes, FE, no, you're a bastard, sort of thing. You know, oh, you just manipulative, or you're just fake, that kind of thing. I think.
I wonder if like Nietzsche might have been like FE polar, because he's all like doing other things for people is weakness. Like, any kindness of being submissive, you're giving up your power. And I'm like, that sounds like he really doesn't get FE at all. Like,
yeah, that's actually a great point, because I've only consumed lasted Nietzsche, but
me too. I've never read it.
The idea of like the Übermensch, wasn't it? Like the self is the entire source of like a morality that are totally, like you say, totally separated from the spectrum. I think you're probably right. Actually, it probably does have, you know, TEFI, probably an INTJ. Yeah.
Do you have any problem with like any other functions? Like for me, I like have big issues with like any when they just like don't want to do the like narrowing down thing, where I'm just like, yeah, this thing's probably happening, and they're like, you don't know, what about this million possible? I'm like, who gives a fuck? Like I get really upset because like my best friend's like an ENFP, so we just sit there like 90% of our conversations are just each other like telling each other to do each other's functions. I'm like, no, dude, you have to NI, and he's like, no, dude, you need to NE. Do you have like anything like that in your life where you've got like just like for me, NE sometimes, like for me, TE just feels dumb, and NE sometimes feels like nails on a chalkboard type feeling. Do you get anything, or like just any of those types of like it hurts type of thing? Do you get that with any function?
I find some NEs, not all NEs. Thankfully, a lot of the NEs. Yeah, of course. Yeah, sorry. But I think I have met some NEs that quite a lot of the time they kind of miss the point, and they take an interpretation, but it's not accurate. Basically, it's not the actual meaning that I intended. But they kind of take that and run with it. But then they won't, like I say, they won't sit with me and say, okay, no, but that's the wrong interpretation. Do you know what I mean? So that can be kind of annoying sometimes. I'm actually generally okay with NE. I think I've ascribed it to my masculine NI, because I want to fight in the intuition realm. And so especially masculine NEs, like I love Jordan Peterson, for instance. Like I do like that that broadening of possibilities, because if I kind of use it to kind of adjust my own NI, because what's the point of having an NI if there's other possibilities that haven't been considered by it, if you know what
I mean? That's really interesting. No, I get what you're saying. My speculation at the moment is that I have feminine NI, and I think part of my problem with NE might be that my NI like struggles to round down in the first place. Now you're throwing random shit at me.
Keeps
like,
getting
really
moved.
Yeah. I really like either sort of axis of masculine intuition, because it's just really clear regardless of what it is. Even if it's NE, they've got a bunch of possibilities, but they can be clear with it. and sort of like are actually responsible for the intuition, rather than just like, hey, shit, random shit, whoa. And I'm like, oh, I have no idea who I am anymore, what the point of my life is. So to go randomly backtrack, do you feel like TE stops you from TIing? Because this is something an INFJ said to me, and I didn't relate to that at all.
Yeah, it does. It kind of jams me up a bit. It's like
Right.
I know that a lot of the time they're trying to help, but they're just throwing. Like, a lot of the time, it feels like they're throwing other reasons, and
Like with any, yeah.
yeah, like oh, you
Well,
haven't
same thing
considered.
with me and any.
Yeah, like you haven't considered these reasons, and it's like, oh my god, yes, I have. I have considered these reasons. Like
Yeah,
I'm 10
yeah.
steps ahead of you at this point. Like you. It's sort of, a lot of the time it feels like it's pulling me back to base reasoning, and it's like
Okay.
I'm trying to get deeper than that. I've already kind of gone past that level. Yeah.
No, I get that. I see that now completely. For me, I didn't get how it would stop you from TIing, because it's like, oh, random dumb reason. And I'm like, yeah, no, I'm on dumb reason number 82 and you're coming at me with number 5. You're an idiot. So I never saw how it would stop me from TIing, because I just like waved them off. I'd be like, ah, fucking idiot, and just move on. But no, that actually makes sense. It's exactly the same thing that I have with any. That's really interesting. So you talk about analyzing people and how it's like you feel like it's potentially bad for them, because like you want to respect people's humanity, but at the same time, like you can't help but read them, and you're reading the implications of what their things like. What does it mean that this person does this action repeatedly, and like that type of stuff? Could you get into that at all? Is that just like pretty much a synopsis of it? Because you want to thingify people as an IJ, supposedly.
Yeah, sort of just it. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure if I can expand on that. Unless, can you reframe the question, or just like repeat it maybe?
So in your Binyamin interview, you were talking about like you have a tendency to analyze people, and it's very intense. So for you, you decided a lot of the time that it's better for you just to withdraw into your NF and just do your own thing, and not really sort of bother people with getting intense and analyzing them. And I'm assuming that like you're seeing into the implications of what they're doing and why, like the subtext of why they're doing it. And for you, that's like dehumanizing, because you want to respect their humanity as an FE person, but then you can't help but break it down. What's going on with that whole process? And like you think it's bad, like for people, and you couldn't explain to Binyamin why you thought it was bad, but I'm here to sort of like break it down and like sort of see possible. We're gonna NE it. We're gonna NETE it. We're gonna sort of break it down.
I think to be honest, I think where it just comes from is in the past. I think people are perhaps less concerned with being analysed and more concerned with you vocalizing the analyzations. I think every time I've vocalized it before, a lot of the time they just dismiss it, or they dig their heels in further, which normally means that I'm right, because why would you protest that much? But so I think yeah, I don't know. I don't really know. When it comes to looking at strangers, I tend not to analyze them, because if you peer into the abyss looks back into you. So I think that's sort of, I think to be honest, I think that's why I don't look at people generally, because I don't want them to look into me, because I know how deeply you can look into others just by looking at them. So I think
that
that's
blows my mind. That was a mind-blowing answer. That was really not what I expected at all. That was great. I can then like expand onto that, and I think you sort of like alluded to it a bit. I was like, it could probably cause decider issues and stuff, because I feel similar to you. Like I feel like I can analyze people a lot, like too much, and it sort of like freaks me out as well, to the point where I'm like, just avert my eyes from that bright light that's trying to blind me right now. So do you feel like it causes you decider issues? Like if you're like analyzing people and you're like, yeah, I noticed you do this thing, it's probably from this thing, whatever, and then they get defensive or whatever, then you like start having like a single decider sort of freak out.
Yeah. I think it is something like that, trying to keep the deciders balanced, because I don't want the SE chaos. So if I don't look at people, I can't be subject to SE chaos. So yeah, I think.
Go on.
Yeah, I was just kind of reiterating the same point, just of keep trying to keep the middle functions balanced, just to make sure that the fourth one doesn't get hurt, I guess. Yeah.
It makes sense. Do you feel like you like have a different experience looking into FI people versus FE people?
In that context, no, I don't. Not necessarily. I sometimes feel like FI people are often kind of easier to talk to, I think. I haven't quite figured out why, but I think it's. I mean, I'm not sure why actually, but there's some theories, but yeah, nothing. I don't think there's any substantial difference. No, no, basically. Yeah.
I feel personally, I've always felt like a really big difference, like even before typology, of like that there was like a big delineation between talking to like people with FE and FI. Like I can read people with FI a lot more easily. Like sort of what you see is what you get with FI people. I feel like
Right,
like
yeah.
I feel like FE is like often like deflecting stuff or something. I don't know how to explain it. It feels like there's a shield, like you're like hiding your TI behind your FE or something.
Yeah, I
Do you
suppose that
see that at all?
I suppose that might come down to like DI in general. You know, like the yeah, it's like to get to the DI of like DE savior, you need to pierce through this sort of DE shield. But with I suppose with FI it is a little bit more maybe apparent, because I think again like the F is more like personhood centric. So with the FIs in particular, their identity and personhood are interlinked, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I
So
was thinking as you were saying that also like there's personhood in like your DI that Dave often says that like F is like where the animal is. Like you can come at somebody with reasons all day, but then when they come at you with their F, it's just like all of a sudden like oh shit, the animal's here. I need to sort of like deal with this or get out of the way. So maybe that has something to do with it. Because what I was like sort of thinking is like even with like somebody who's TI savior, like an ISCP or an INTP or whatever the hell type they are, there's something for me that's harder to read about them. Like I feel like FE is sort of managing perceptions, whereas
right.
FI just doesn't give a shit about managing perceptions. So they're just like, I am me, therefore fuck you.
That's a great
Which I
point.
like with you, I don't get that at all. With you, I get that you're trying to sort of like keep me in like a good light, and you're trying to sort of manage stuff. So I don't see Fred as directly as I would if Fred was an INFP or something.
That's a great point. I genuinely do agree with that. That's not me FEing. Okay. I do agree. Yeah.
So I was assuming you were going to give me some like completely different answer to what you did give me on there, and I sort of like wrote a question based off like that answer. But I was thinking about like maybe like demon TI might have like something to do with like you disliking analyzing people, but
Oh,
it
interesting.
doesn't seem like it does from what you answered.
That's an
But
interesting
like that you
point,
could maybe
yeah.
feel like insecure in your reasoning, or you could be like going really deep with your NI, and then you've like got all these reasons, and you're like, no, I'm seeing this thing, but I don't know. I don't know what my point was, Fred.
I think it's fallen out of my head. What you just led with there was a good point, but I've forgotten it. Like, what was the
MDI having MTI having demon MTI having problems with like reasons that it's applying to the analysis of people.
Right. Yes. I think
analysis in general.
I think I'm generally more secure in the NT. I actually think just the masculine functions are where your security is, because the SF is where I'm most insecure. And sorry to take us on a tangent. I think that's one of many reasons where one of many ways in which people can get themselves mistyped, like a masculine function mistype, because they see their security in their masculine functions. Like, because I thought I was NT, I was very sure I was NT, but
for sure, yeah.
But I was very sure of NT because that's where my masculinity is. So, yeah, hopefully that answered the question.
It kind of did. It wasn't really a question. I was just sort of suggesting maybe
Okay.
MTI demon MTI could like lead into like you have sort of having insecurities in that area. But continuing, yeah.
I'm secure in myself and my reasoning, but I'm insecure when I have to apply them anywhere. So I think that's when it comes to analysis, I'm very comfortable using my T for myself, but then having to give that to the tribe is very difficult. Yeah.
Wow. I kind of feel the opposite. I might be TE. So we're coming to the deep part of the interview, Fred. We're going into Demon T and Demon T shit shows.
Yay!
As
My
you affectionately call it. Yeah. So what's it like on your end, and how do you see like when you get into like arguments with people overthinking stuff? Like a lot of the time, and most of the time, whenever I've seen you argue with somebody, you're always basically right, and your reasonings are perfectly good and coherent, and there's nothing wrong.
Thanks.
But how do you see it as being like when you're getting TI triggered? How do you see it differently from like just a normal TI savior being like, no, you're wrong, no. How do you see your version being different from just saying nope?
Well, I think when I kind of get into the TI fights, I'm more comfortable with FE for a start. So I think I can go harder into the argument than like a TI first would be able to. Like we both know a few TI leads who are super nice, and they'll think that they've kind of overstepped their logic, but really they haven't. Like compared to the shit shows that I get myself into. But yeah, I suppose the difference is I think just because it's lower. If I'm paying attention to it, then I'm effectively using at least 3 functions because I'm using my 2 comfortable functions and I'm focusing on my TI. Whereas for a TI to have to fight with argumentation, there's less reason for them to get down to the other functions, if you know what I mean. So,
right.
Does that make sense? In the same way.
Yes, like we were talking about with personality engineering, how he needs to like really forge his ideas in the fires of Mount Doom.
Yeah. Like I've had some NT arguments with some people in the community, which I probably shouldn't have, but even with like the feminine SE first, they have a lot more energy to fight in their like masculine NI than I do, because it's like, oh, for fuck's sake, like I can't, I'm not going to be able to argue about the NI stuff because it's, you see what I mean? Like, because in order for them,
obvious to you,
yeah, in order for them to argue about the NI, they've had to go through all 3 other functions, and now they're at the final destination, and I'm at the starting point, going, why the fuck are we talking about this? We need to be getting to the SE. You know what I mean? So I think it's a similar kind of thing with the TI firsts. Obviously, I'm excluding like any TIs who just love arguing generally, but I don't know.
Yeah. Do the officially typed NETIs do that a lot? Because I feel like most of the people who like come in with they're like, I'm a fucking TI dom type shit. They're never officially typed, and like they're so probably demon NT like.
Yeah. I don't know, but yeah, that is very. That's speaking to that about one of our mutual friends, about the how rarely. Oh fuck. I'm agreeing with what you're saying. Basically, I'm just trying to re-say what you've just said. Yeah.
It's an F class, man. It's what you got to do. You're programmed to do it. Does it feel life and death to you when you get into these arguments, or is it just like a stupid fucking whatever double-decider bullshit argument to you?
Sometimes it does, depending on what it is. A lot of the time, what I'm arguing about, I don't really care about. It's just I fancy an argument or someone's wrong, and most of the time, like arguments on the internet, I find that I learn the most when I'm arguing. So, like, as convicted as I sound, there's at least 30% of me that's going, where am I wrong? You know, like, so I think that's why a lot of the time, I think that's why I like fighting kind of these like intellectual arguments. Yeah. I think I like these intellectual arguments because that's I don't know. Like a kind of analogy I use is it's sort of like some kind of rock, and I'm trying to chip away at it to try and make it something. And I'm not trying to build up the logic. I'm trying to kind of like smash bits away. So I mean, so I think that's a large part of why I argue, just to like
Wow,
forge in fire kind of thing.
that is such a good sort of frame of reference and like explanation of like what TIFE double deciding in like a play context is. Like you basically just like gave like the best explanation I've ever heard of like what savior play TIFE is. Well done,
Yeah,
that was really good. I'm happy with
thanks.
that, Fred.
I'm glad.
We've got our nugget of genius out of this episode. Yeah, it's interesting because for me, I have like the same thing, but I really don't want to argue with people. Like I'm doing the same thing whilst trying to like FE more at the same time, like, but not FE in the way like. I noticed like a lot of things where like you can take responsibility for FE in a way that I can't, to where like you can navigate it and like it's not hard for you to deal with like somebody thinking you're an idiot for 5 seconds if then you can come around and show them that you're not and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is. Like I feel like I'm like doing that breaking stuff down, but I really want to make sure that nobody's feelings get hurt most of the time, unless I've just decided this person's a fucking idiot and I don't care about their feelings. But for the most part, like everyone in the community, I try and not get on their nerves or anything. I'm sort of like more apprehensive.
That's interesting. I think that there is a misconception about FE that we care about people's feelings, and we I think FE savior, it just means that that's the domain that we're looking at more than thinking. So the real bastards really are the FE saviors, because I'm very comfortable being mean to people because it's just tribe emotions, man. Like it's not a big deal. Yeah,
you don't freak out about it at all.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's definitely some times where I don't want to hurt people's feelings. But I fundamentally don't respect. I think because I fundamentally don't respect feelings as a personal thing. I don't really care as much about stepping on people's feelings because it's not a personal thing. Like we can get past it, especially with the double decided. We can move past hurt feelings. But so like I see a lot of the FIs that come in and they say they're FE. Well, with their understanding of FE, they are FE. They actually do care about how people feel on the deep level. Even like even the TE firsts, I would say they're more empathetic than me in a lot of ways because they really respect that. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, I kind of feel you. Yeah. For me, I'm seeing like. I'm also seeing that like for you can really actually like do the FE as well. Like for me, I feel like if I do hurt someone's feelings, so like damage control afterwards, it's like I really don't want to take responsibility for that. Like a lot of the things that you've been saying, like I feel like most of the time I relate to you and sort of everyone who has our functions like a lot in the community, and like we'll talk about stuff and we're all sort of like we'll have different conclusions or whatever, but we're like processing stuff in the same way. And then like you're one of the few savior FE men in this sort of like configuration of functions, and you'll say some shit that just blows my mind. Like the other day, like somebody was talking about if somebody's upset, how do you deal with it? And you were like, I get upset with them and we experience it together. And I'm like, as a last resort, that's what I would do. Like really, like I don't want to do that at all. Like normally I just like do every other function before doing that.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Like you can really take responsibility for the FE, like in a way that I think like when I was talking to Otum, my first episode was with Otum, and he was saying that he feels his FE being demon, like he sees himself double deciding, but he sees it being demon in that that's not what his focus is, and he doesn't really care about the FE. Like he sort of gets to it on the back end, but he's actually just being selfish most of the time and just using FE so that people think he's cool and stuff. And I sort of relate quite a lot to that. I always thought that FE was shit. Like back in MBTI days when I thought I was an INFJ, I was like, yeah, they're talking about this FE being this amazing thing, but as far as I'm concerned, it's just sort of being superficial and shallow, and I'm just sort of full of shit and just telling people what they want to hear. That's how I saw my own FE.
That's interesting.
Which I assume you don't relate
Yeah.
to at all. For you, it's like not that.
A lot of it is about social appeasement. That is a large part of it. You just sometimes you have to tell people something that's not true in order to just get stuff done a lot of the time, or to help to help them as well to understand something. Because what was it? I think Terry Pratchett called it a lie to children. It's this idea that you have to teach, you have to kind of give people wrong information because they can't digest the right information yet. See what I mean?
Yes.
So like, I see a lot of my FE in that. It's like, okay, I can see that you haven't understood what I've said, or I don't think you're going to understand what I'm going to say. So I'm just going to appease you now and kind of try and, I don't know, be patient, I guess, or something like that. And to be honest, in a less noble way, a lot of the time it is just to get people off my back. It's just, oh yeah, and you just kind of appease them to get rid of them or something like that. But I think FE Savior, I'm more comfortable with that as a concept, maybe, which actually makes my FE kind of shit. I'll say this until the day I die. The best FE is the FE of the TI. Like all the TIs I know, their FE is way better than mine, and that's not me. That's not just me being in the FE. That's me, honestly. That's what I see continuously because they're not. It's a more innocent approach, I think. They're more innocently going to the tribe with their feelings, or more innocently trying to console people. Whereas for me, it's more of a going through the motions kind of thing.
Right. I see that too, to an extent. I also like this is not anything to do with any of these questions now, but have you also noticed like this weird pattern where let's just use like the people that we've been talking about recently as like a sort of like frame of reference. I noticed that when you're on Facebook talking in comment sections, you could be NT, right? Everything you're saying is just NT stuff. And then Otin comes in, who is NT version of you, and he just comes in and he's just NF as hell, and he's like, yeah, man. And it's just like always that, like there's always like whatever your demon decider is, that's what you present. And then like I don't know so much about the observer, but have you noticed that? What is that like? Projecting on the internet.
I suppose it is to a certain level peacocking. The internet's a really good place to go to just get your demons out and practice them.
Good point.
Yeah, I think when it comes to arguments, I suppose that's probably more on the masculine stuff. Maybe I wouldn't know, but I would imagine our boy Otim would probably argue about ST stuff before he'd argue about NF stuff. Like he's more
definitely does.
Because
I've noticed that. Yeah.
And sort of like a slight tangent, just because we're talking about our boy. I've noticed I'm really envious of FNI because I think FNI is more colloquially intuitive, I would say. And
you're jealous of FNI.
A little bit, yeah.
That's crazy.
Like I've noticed with FNIs that there's this sort of amazement at the possibilities. Even like Savior Demon, it's not like demon amazement, but it's sort of like it's just being moved by the intuition. So
yeah.
And I really envy. I do envy that quite a lot. Just being able to be moved by the patterns is like I don't know.
Do you know what? This actually brings up a question that I've never asked anybody with MNI. Do you feel, because this is like, so it's been like a consistent thing with like the few people that I've interviewed with FNI, and I think I have it too. Do you ever get when you learn something, when you get that sort of like eureka NI moment, where like you just get clarity on something?
I can't think of any examples.
I say you're sleeping on something and you're like, oh, I need to figure this thing out. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Oh shit, it does make sense. It's been right in front of me this whole time. Here's a theme that's like now emerged.
That's interesting. No, I don't really have that. I have lots of little sort of burst fires, sort of like small realizations. It's less of a. I do have occasional moments of like clarity, but it's more like because it doesn't really hit me. I go to it, if you see what I mean. Like I go to the pattern, so I'm not really. Yeah, I think that is a good example of FNI. I think maybe that is a big difference.
that wasn't even the question. I thought that was just intrinsically what NI did. I was
No, I
just
don't.
like, giving a preamble ramble there.
I mean, I do have like everybody has flashes of clarity, but they're not a huge part of mine because I feel like I have more control over them. It's what's an analogy? It's sort of like Actually, I don't know. I'll get back to you though. Maybe I'll put it in the comments. But yeah.
Feel free, that would be great. You fucking just blown my mind so much. I didn't even ask the question and my mind's already blown. Fucking hell. Like, this little realizations thing is sort of more like, if somebody wrote that on the internet somewhere, I would have associated that with any, like, a bunch of little new things coming in and like being like, oh, a new thing. But I guess you're not like taking in new things, you're like processing it yourself and like coming up with the new things. So a theme that we've had with feminine NI, with the people that I've spoken to, is like, for me, I'll learn something. I'll be like, as a random example, I'm working on a song or something, and I'll be like, oh, this thing just isn't clicking. It should click, but it's not. And I'll be like walking down the street, just like trying to process it really hard, just like trying to go down all the possible alleys of how the fuck can this come to the conclusion of it working. And then all of a sudden I'll have like a really big realization of just like some big thematic archetypal thing that is like consistent in all of the songs I've been listening to, and it's been here this whole time. How have you not seen it? And I'll be like, oh shit, and then I'll harp on it for like a year or two. I'll be like, this is the meaning of life type thing. And then like you'll forget, and then you'll come back around to it like a year later, and you'll be like, oh, I'm fucking up my life. What is going on here? Why am I screwing up? And then you'll come back and you'll be like, oh shit, that thing I learned a year ago that I realized was God at the time. And like you just keep making the same realization over and over again. And I'm assuming you're just looking at me like you're a fucking idiot.
No. This is I've spoken to Otam about this as well. Yeah, my experience is more of I have lots of just little realizations. Like that's how I'm kind of like navigating. Just like lots of, instead of like one big click, it's like a, I don't know, it's like a Gatling gun, I guess, rather than like a bazooka.
Is that not your TI?
Maybe. I mean, I don't know. It's not necessarily logical steps. It's lots of it's just patterns and stacking patterns on top of each other. So there's lots of little layers. I'm constantly.
Okay. What is like? It's going to be impossible for you to describe, and you've like had problems describing it in the past. But like, so now I'm thinking that what you're trying to describe is you've got this big NI thing, and you're just like seeing random SE shits, and you're just bringing that into it. Like you're cherry picking what you want out of the SE and bringing that into your theme.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
Does life have a theme in the mind of Fred too, or is there no general? Do you not see like a big overarching thing that's just happening over and over again, or do you see that or not? Or?
I think there's too many themes to say that there's just one theme. I think the theme of the world is themes.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't really be able to say that there's one. Like I think when Bin asked me something like is everything connected or something like that, and it was like everything's connected, but then like there's many different ways in which it is connected. So it's not. I don't even know. I don't even know how to explain it. Yeah, I don't know how to explain it.
For me, I kind of like when I was watching that interview, my like I can't watch shit without having to chat shit in my head and get distracted from what I'm watching. And like my answer, I had to pause the video to think about it, and I was like, for me, everything kind of is one thing. Like you can separate it out, but for me, that's like kind of like SI is like separating shit out. But ultimately, like things aren't connected; they are one thing. Like your answer was like about pantheism and like how we're a bunch of little brains looking at one brain, like the universe is a big brain with brains in it. For me, it's just like actually one thing that we're just like bullshitting ourselves into saying as separate things.
Right, yeah.
Do you see things in that type of way at all?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
do you see, like, we're now
By
just
the way,
getting
yeah,
really deep into what is your NI.
yeah, you definitely have masculine sensory, by the way.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
What was it, like the hand things?
No, it's everything so far.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I had it in my head. I had to say it. So
Okay. So do you see? So is everything connected to you, or is it just one thing? Or is there no difference? You see no difference?
yeah, I think there's not an intelligible difference. I mean,
Okay, good. That's sort of what I was thinking you'd answer.
yeah. Because I mean, what's that question even mean in the sense of?
So, like the way I'm seeing it is, let's say you write a bit of code that runs and it makes like a thing, like a pop-up on the screen that you can click OK on, right? I see like there's a bunch of parts to it, but ultimately like it is the thing that you click OK on. For you, is it the code or is it the thing you press OK on? This is a really fucking NF way of trying to get to something.
This is interesting.
Because
Wait,
for me,
yeah. Go on.
for me, it kind of is both ultimately. But like, if I'm looking out into the world, I can be like, oh, this is a duvet inside a duvet cover, but ultimately it just is a fucking thing. And like delineating it, it's kind of just like it's nice on it's like on a TI SI level, it's like pleasing to the mind somehow, but it's a delusion.
That's interesting. This is one of the things I actually did thought about in preparation for this, in the sense of what are you actually looking at right now? As in, what's on your screen? Are you looking at me waving the spoon? Is this spoon moving across the screen? Because this isn't actually moving across your screen, is it? Just lights are coming off and on to make it appear to you. So in your mind, it's moving across the screen, but it's not actually. So I think it's my perception of the world is it's everything is itself and also the opposite of itself. And yeah, it's I don't know. You could boil it down to like nothing is real and it's all perception. And I would argue to the human mind, the world doesn't actually exist. It's just perception. Like color doesn't actually exist. There's no such thing as color. Color only exists in your brain, for instance.
See, I kind of see it like the opposite now. Like I used to be really into like peacocking ST and like being really into science and stuff. And like as a random tangent, I think I need ST to understand NF or NF to understand ST. I don't know. I feel like I can't separate the two well. But I've gotten to a point that I used to always be really into like empiricism and science and all this stuff, and like we need to break it down in the sensory to know that it's a thing. And it's like, man, if you have a ruler and you're trying to measure how hot the sun is with it, then you're just being a fucking idiot. Like you're not being pragmatic because you don't have the right tool to measure something. And I've kind of like now in like the last, like I'm 25. I turned 25 like 2 days ago. In the last 5 years or something, somewhere along in like at the beginning of my 20s, I stopped giving a shit. And I just kind of decided that perception is reality because like, if you take like World of Warcraft, for example, or something, if there's nobody logged onto a server, then there is no rendered physical space. And I feel like in this analogy, if we're the players and the world is the server, if there's no people to look at it, then there's nothing really fucking, it's just information. So as far as I'm concerned, everything just kind of is everything as it is in the perception of a human being, because without the perception of a human being, there cannot be anything. This is really, we're going really deep into the NF now.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's
okay.
The world looks very differently to even just other animals. Even though we have very similar brains, like a bat, for instance, like a blind bat, they could, for all we know, they could still be seeing. They could still be using the parts of the brain that process color to be able to build an image of their environment. But it would look very different to a human mind. So yeah, I agree. I mean, it is all perception. Yeah, I mean, things obviously exist. Like this definitely exists, but
does it?
Does it? Yeah. I can only say for sure that I believe it to exist.
Well, it exists
So
in your
yeah,
mind, and like if you take the like I think therefore I am thing, like if you're thinking it, you have to exist. If you're experiencing that, then the sensory input of you experiencing it cannot be real, but your experience of it is real. So it sort
yeah,
of like extends out. So like you think, therefore you are. So you're experiencing this shit. So the experience is real. It might be subjectively real, but who's to say that subjective reality isn't as good as objective reality?
mm.
And, or if even objective reality even fucking exists, because I don't think it does personally at this point.
Yeah. It's like do you remember the dress thing? It was like
Yeah,
two
yeah,
colors, or the shoe thing. It's the
yeah,
same kind of thing. I mean, we can actually test the color of the pixel and say it's definitely black and blue, or whatever it was, but you can actually perceive it as differently. So, but then, yeah, is it any less real if you perceive it differently?
yeah. Because what is a color? Like colors aren't really like a feature of the universe. It's a feature of the human brain. So it's like
Yeah.
we're now getting off onto like really big tangents, and I don't want to keep you here all day. So it's been over an hour, Fred, of just
Oh
this.
my god, time's
um,
disappeared.
yeah, it's been. I'm definitely seeing how you'll save your blast because I keep wanting to blast to like expand on. Like when I was like talking to Otum, whenever he'd like be like, I don't know, I'd like see him trying to do the OI, and I'd be like, I'll help him out. He's last. Whenever I'm trying to do this with you, I'm just like throwing you off of your own blast. So that's been like a really interesting little difference. I've got three little questions now, which is, do you see any like your NI being delusional and like having NI delusions in your life? And if you do, where are those?
Definitely, and when I was younger, to an extreme degree. But I think I'm quite fortunate in the sense that because I am NI and because it is so prone to delusion, I also can know delusion better than the average person, I think. So it just it can be very delusional. It can grab onto the wrong pattern, um, but I don't think there's anything inherent to it that means it persists throughout your life. I don't think it does in my case, because like ever since like my late teens, I've been very focused on trying to prove myself wrong. Like that's a kind of a focal goal. Um, because if I don't want to have a conception of something and have it be wrong, and the best way of making sure that that doesn't happen is breaking it to pieces. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think NI generally can be very delusional. But then actually, all functions can be delusional, especially as savior. So, but
So where have you seen yourself? Like some SE examples of NI delusion? Because for some random like interjection of like frame of reference, I also had like massive anger issues as a kid, and like I think like being savior N, whether I'm NE or NI, definitely has something to do with it. So just like the way you see things and the reality not aligning up with it, just like you see red and stuff.
yeah, just absolute frustration with like reality. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, was there another question that I'm overlooking? You want an
Yeah, no,
example?
I'll give you an example, but the question was
Uh,
like, where do you see yourself, like an SE example of yourself having these NI delusions and how it affects your life? And like, sort of like maybe some stuff about when you were a kid, how, like, what was driving you mental as a kid that was making you angry, if you remember, because I don't really remember, but I know that it happened.
no, I can't. I had a lot of like social paranoia. I had a lot of like god delusions, god complex and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I had the same thing, yeah.
Yeah. Um, I like to think I've outgrown it, hopefully, but
I definitely
yeah.
haven't.
Yeah, I think it's typology in general, isn't it? Like it will never go away. You just find ways of getting past it a little bit quicker each time. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you have SE examples of your
No,
NI delusion like
apparently
affecting
I
your
don't.
life?
No, I don't. I really don't. Oh, I don't know. Like, sometimes,
Like,
like,
what's the most like random recent mental conspiracy that you've had or something? Or
oh,
not even like a big conspiracy, just like something in your work, like this guy trying to fuck with me, he puts a bagel on the side of the desk or whatever.
I did go
Like
a little
totally
bit
justified.
deep in. Did you hear about the Wayfair thing?
No, I don't know what that is.
Okay, Lindsay posted it in the community group thing. And I went a little bit too conspiratorial on like the Wayfair thing. So just to give a rough overview, basically the conspiracy theory was Wayfair is sex trafficking children.
What's Wayfair?
Missing
information.
It's like a home and furniture website.
Oh, okay. Right.
They sell sofas and things, desks, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so yeah. I mean, I know I wasn't getting too conspiratorial about it, but I was like, oh, this seems dodgy, you know. So yeah.
What was the conspiracy? They like traffic children.
So someone
you entered the scene, and what was your reaction to this information?
So essentially, there was on their website they listed some cabinets, and there was like 6 or 8 or something like that, and they all had like the same image or 2 different images for all 8, and they were priced at like ridiculously expensive, like $14,000, something like that. And well, at first it's sort of like, well, there's other explanations for this. You know, it could be a software weirdness. Like I know like the weirdness that can happen in software, just like random bugs that make absolutely no sense. But yeah, there was just lots of little things that added up that I was like, oh, maybe there is something to it. I just got a little bit I took it too seriously. I think that's just I can't give any more sensory details about it, unfortunately.
You know what? This is like really definitely like giving like this whole chat like a big thing about this is like a massive like channel change, so I apologize. But a big thing that I get out of doing these videos is that like I feel like I've got shit consumed, so I learn a lot through play. And I'm definitely seeing that I don't have masculine NI. Because something that Otum said was like, I see myself doing OI and OE, which to me like suggests that I have feminine OI. And Otum was saying, I was like, I either have feminine NI or I have masculine NE, because I'm not jumping all over the place like a feminine NE person. And I'm not like as coherent on an NI point of view or an as succinct. And supposedly masculine NI, or not N, masculine N in general, like Aziz doesn't do SI. He just sort of does MNE, and just sort of any like his masculine N just sort of takes hold of just all of the sensory and just like, I'm just doing this, and it's all encapsulated. And I'm seeing that in you because you know what you're talking about, and you definitely have like times where stuff has happened, but it's just all NI. Like you're just taking it all into your NI, and you're just like, I can't really give the sensory example because fuck that. It's in my NI. I know what it means.
Yeah, like to a large extent, it's if I had the sensory information, I would give it. But it's like the way I describe it is, I'm only storing information as like I am storing the information as N stuff basically.
Yeah,
so when information comes in, I'm comparing it to what I have. And if this is wrong, I throw it out. If there's a conflict somewhere with my intuition and this new information, I'll then look at the comparison and I'll figure out which one's wrong, and then I'll throw the wrong one away. I probably overthrow away the new information, if I'm honest. But then, like when it comes down to actually having to talk about it, it's just not in my head, because it's like, well, I threw that away, you know. Like I literally don't have that information anymore because I made use of it and then disposed of it.
Yeah, you just literally are like, okay, incoming SE, let's convert the bit that I care about into NI, and then just throw all the rest out. It's really interesting. Like you just have like, you've just taken the point basically. You're just like, what's the point? Fuck everything else. Here's the point. Cool. Move on. So it's really interesting.
That's like, yeah. That's like the hardest part of like dealing with the world in general, because there's just so much sensory information, especially when someone's talking to me or trying to convince me of something. It's like there's too much information here. I have to go through this whole process of comparison, because I don't know if I'm very prone to people telling me I did something, because a lot of the time I just have to accept that I did, because I either don't know, or there's no time for me to compare it. Or a lot of the time I would say, I can't have done that, because if I had done that, then this concept would be different. That's how I sort of remember sensory information. Sort of like
I had that with my mum.
Yeah, it's sort of like a transition of states rather than the states themselves. Hopefully that makes sense. Yeah.
It does, yeah. But it's interesting that both, like, regardless of what your intuitive function is, you just, if it's masculine, you just sort of don't even give a shit about the sensory anymore, because it's just like, I guess it's just because all your pressures and your intuition, so you're just relying on patterns rather than actual details. The details are irrelevant if you know that the pattern's right or it's wrong. Do you ever get like random false memories in your NI?
How would I know that they're false?
Like I've been like, I think I sort of blank out during parts of my day sometimes. This isn't like a common thing, but it's happened enough that I've noticed it. I think I blank out and I go into like sleep energy when I'm like walking places sometimes. And like my brain will then just like fill in the gaps of what happened in the sensory. And I'll like tell people like, oh, you remember that time we were walking to this place and we had that conversation? I'll be like, that definitely never happened. And I was like, no, it was after this and before this. And I'll be like, yeah, no, that didn't happen. And I'll be like, okay, good. I'm completely insane. I'm glad that we've come to this conclusion.
That's
it's probably
a
a feminine thing then.
I mean, I definitely have, like everybody has false memories of some kind, but not, I don't think to that degree. That's interesting. There must be, must be a difference. You're right.
Or it might just be I'm crazy and it might have nothing to do with typology. Do you feel like you have many like demon sensory fails?
I know I have a lot, but my SE's so demon I don't notice them a lot of the time.
It's like, I'm asking this guy after we've decided that you don't really take in the sensory details. I'm now asking you, give us some sensory details on your lack of sensory details. This is the problem with SI. You see, once you've written stuff out beforehand, you're just locked into it. Speaking of which, do you feel like you have stuff that your type shouldn't theoretically have? Like, do you feel like you have decider issues, or that you go into massive like "don't control me, bro" freakouts? Would you want to be controlled and you like not give a shit what anyone thinks?
I have had a lot of moments of "don't control me, bro," but I think that's very characteristic of an OI, and especially for them to stick out in my mind so much. You know, I remember running away from home. You know, I remember, fighting with my dad about being controlled. You know, stuff like that, where the OE probably won't remember that stuff, but they'll remember that revelation they had, or they'll remember whatever. So, that's one example. I feel like I'm pretty typical for my type. I think, I don't think I don't think there's anything that I don't think there's any part of me that doesn't conform to the type. Basically, I don't think.
A random, like, I'm being hit again by like forgetting stuff and remembering it FNI style. Something you were saying about like your NI, how you just take things in and then you like discard the stuff afterwards. Something about that reminded me of like what Dave of all people was telling me about masculine TI, like with like when people come at you with a bunch of TE shit and they're like coming at you with all these arguments and they hit one that might be good, they'll be like, oh, tell me I'm right, and you'll be like, I don't know, like I actually need to go away and think about this, like I can't just play back and forth with you like this. There's something about, I think it's just like masculine introverted functions really need time to process. I don't know why I decided to blast about that and interrupt the whole flow of everything, but I did it, so there we go.
This whole interview has been both of us apologising for going on tangents and breaking the flow.
So do you feel like we're closing up now? That was literally my last question, but we're just going to address all the loose ends on that. I don't mind being controlled at all. Like if somebody like has like let's say I'm on a university course and the professor wants me to do something that I don't want to do, I'm not going to freak out about that. But like I like having the clarity of that. But then I feel like if I'm trying to control something, like I'm trying to narrow something down and get to a point, and then somebody else tries to control my control, do you get that really annoys you?
Yeah, it does.
Like that's where it sticks out. It's like I'm trying to narrow down here, and they're like, you should narrow down in this direction, and you're like, but I'm narrowing down here. What the fuck?
Yeah, that's especially prominent in my TI. Like, there's a TI person, I don't want to use names, was trying to help me with something, going to university. and it's the same point. Yeah, it's sort of like trying to rest. Basically, I also have those kind of don't control me bro moments, but for the most part, also, I don't mind. I don't mind other people taking the reins and being in control, as long as someone is in control.
Yeah. So, just closing off, any weird things about your type? Do you have decider stuff? Like, do you have any decider issues? Because I feel like a lot of, like, the lead sleep, INFJs and stuff just really don't have them at all, and they just don't care. So I'm interested in seeing like what you have there.
I have like a certain level of social anxiety, but not to the same degree that an actual decider would. Yeah, I mean, I see some decider issues. I see having a hard time with my reasoning. I see having a hard time with tribes emotions. But I don't know. I think there definitely was a time where I did feel more of a decidery, like a few years ago maybe, up until a few years ago. But yeah, now I don't care as much about the decider stuff, I think.
I've heard that people grew up through the decider stuff. Like, apparently Dave, of all people, in his early 20s had like a lot of observer issues. And like, it's seeming like I might be a double decider now. It's like the most likely thing is I'm probably a double decider. And I thought I was a single observer not a single decider for fucking like a year, basically. I thought I was TI dom. And apparently it's just when you're young, you just have problems with your deciders regardless of where they are, or your observers.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So you're becoming a level 2 Fred. You're becoming like you're overcoming the first few steps of your typology journey. I think that was pretty much it. Do you have any sort of like amazing masculine NI sort of like singular one point to round this off with, or some things that you'd like to tell people?
Yeah, but if they want to find out, they have to come and message me on Facebook. And then I'll give them the secrets, and they have to send me $5.99 in the post, and I'll send them a little DVD with my insights on it. No, I did think I really have anything to sign off with. Everybody have a good day. That's what I'd say.
Okay, yeah, that works for me. I was going to say anything to do with like type that you could advise people on, but yeah, everyone have a good day. Is a perfectly good ending.
Yeah.
Bye, guys. Have a nice day. Thank you for watching. Fred probably appreciates it. I know that I definitely do. Hopefully you learned something from this sort of NF. Two people trying not to blast over each other. Sort of existential nightmare video. No, I'm really hoping that like I was getting like random clicking and stuff, and I hope that didn't come across. And if it did, and you hear it, then you know that I'm very upset about it. I'll see you guys soon. Thank you, Fred, for coming and doing this interview. It was really insightful. Really good to get some differences between both of us and play. I feel like I learned a lot. And I didn't even have to consume a thing. What a genius solution. Bye.